All right, picture this for a second. We are on a coastal stretch of Somalia, completely and utterly removed from the safety of international maritime law. It's just a beach, but heavily armed men are gathering on the sand, and they are preparing for an absolutely massive payday. In this explainer, we're unpacking the truly harrowing true story of Captain Richard Phillips. We're going to look at what is essentially a masterclass in high-stakes crisis management, and the whole thing kicks off right here, just looking out at the vast open ocean. Attach a ship bigger than the sea. Man, just let that sink in for a moment. That isn't just some dramatic line out of a Hollywood movie. That was the actual rallying cry for the men standing on that beach. You see, the payday involved in these hijackings is so insanely high that local guys literally beg to join these heavily armed crews. It's this terrifying economy driven by pure desperation and extreme risk. I mean, they aren't looking to pull off some quick, small-time robbery. They're actively hunting for a massive, floating fortress. Now, you might be thinking this is just a random, chaotic scramble, right? But no, it's actually a highly calculated three-step operation. First things first, they gather the muscle on the beach. Second, they deploy a very specific fleet. We're talking 2 fast, agile, small attack boats backed up by 1 large mothership. But honestly, it's the third step that is the most chilling. They are actively tracking the communication frequencies of targets out on the water. They already know the routes, they are listening in, and they are heading out completely prepared for a takedown. So out on the open water, these guys are basically surveying the sea like predators looking for a meal. And they don't waste their time on impossible targets, the heavily guarded ships traveling in packs. Instead, their eyes fall on a vessel separated from the herd. Just 1 lone cargo ship, completely isolated, making its way toward Mombasa. Because they've been tracking those radio frequencies, they know for a fact that this massive, vulnerable target is sailing right into their trap. Enter the captain of that isolated cargo ship, Richard Phillips. And listen, he wasn't just flying blind out here. He is navigating a notoriously dangerous route that he knows is heavily populated by pirates. And his radar is completely up. He knows the stakes. He knows that out in these waters, complacency is literally deadly. So the board is officially set for this incredibly intense cat-and-mouse game between a seasoned, alert captain and a crew of heavily armed hunters. And this is where the noose really begins to tighten. Phillips is watching the radar and he spots these unknown boats approaching fast. So, to test them, he issues a tactical order to his crew: turn the ship left. He's just testing the waters to see if it's maybe just passing traffic. But the very second that massive cargo ship turns, those small boats mirror the exact same move. Pursuit confirmed. Realizing they are absolutely being hunted, Phillips immediately gets on the radio and calls the UK Maritime Trade Operations in Dubai, desperately seeking immediate help. Can you even imagine the stomach-dropping dread of this moment? You are staring down an imminent, deadly threat, and the operator in Dubai essentially just shrugs at you. The response is literally, "I have registered your complaint, then close all the doors, maybe they are fishermen." You are actively being hunted and you're met with sheer bureaucratic dismissal. Captain Phillips doesn't even bother arguing. He just hangs up, stating firmly that these are definitely not fishermen. He knows right then and there. He is entirely on his own. Which brings us to a frankly terrifying number. 1. Just 1 single mile. Phillips grabs his telescope and the distance has closed so incredibly fast. I mean, in maritime terms, a mile means they are practically knocking on the front door. The window for any sort of evasive maneuver is completely vanishing, and the sheer speed of those small pirate boats is just eating up that final mile second by terrifying second. Looking through that telescope at just a mile out, the horrifying reality is no longer just a little blip on a radar screen. Phillips gets complete visual confirmation. He can clearly see the men in the boats, and even worse, he can actually see the sunlight glinting off their weapons. Every single man on those boats is armed to the teeth. There is zero room for doubt anymore. They are heavily armed pirates, and they are coming to board his ship. Okay, so you have 0 physical defense, and the authorities basically just hung up on you. What do? Well, Phillips resorts to this brilliant, totally desperate act of psychological warfare. Remembering that the pirates are tracking their communication frequencies, he picks up the radio and executes a massive bluff. He fakes a call to the military, speaking loud and clear so the pirates can hear every word. He details that 2 boats are attacking and that an armed military response is imminent. He is literally speaking directly to his hunters, trying to terrify them into turning their boats around. But here's the thing about a bluff, right? It only works if the enemy believes it enough to actually retreat. And these pirates, they left the beach with one goal: to catch a ship bigger than the sea. So as that final mile evaporates into thin air,
we are left with a terrifying question. When the psychological warfare ends and the physical distance finally closes to absolute zero, what happens when these heavily armed men call his bluff and their hands finally grab onto the steel hull of that cargo ship?